Hey there, and welcome aboard. Today, we're stepping back in time, all the way to the 18th century, to explore the marvels of one of the most famous sailing warships ever built, HMS Victory. Imagine yourself standing on the deck of a massive wooden giant, the smell of tar and salt hanging in the air, ropes and rigging crisscrossing overhead like an intricate web, and the creaking of timbers beneath your feet syncing perfectly with the gentle sway of the ocean. This isn't just a ship, it's a floating city, a marvel of engineering, and a machine designed for one ultimate purpose: war on the high seas. To truly understand how HMS Victory worked, we need to start from the very foundation, the hull. The hull of an 18th century warship was the backbone of the vessel, the part that kept it afloat and held everything together. Built mostly from oak, prized for its strength and resistance to rot, the hull was a complex assembly of thousands of precisely cut timbers. Carpenters would shape each piece meticulously, knowing that even a small misalignment could compromise the ship's seaworthiness. The hull wasn't just a hollow box of wood, it was carefully contoured, curved to slice through waves efficiently, while providing stability and space for hundreds of sailors, officers, cannons, and supplies. Below deck, the hull was divided into multiple levels or decks, each serving a different purpose. The lower deck housed the heaviest artillery, including some of the ship's massive cannons. These were arranged in gun ports that could be opened when ready to fire, and closed to protect the crew from incoming fire or the harsh sea. Each cannon wasn't just a lump of iron, it was an engineering feat, carefully cast and balanced, designed to fire round shot that could tear through enemy hulls like a hot knife through butter. The lower decks were also home to storage for gunpowder and ammunition. Powder magazines were lined with copper or other non-sparking materials, and access was tightly controlled. Even a small spark in the wrong place could turn the whole ship into a fiery tomb. Above the lower deck was the middle deck, where additional cannons were stationed. This was also where many sailors lived in cramped conditions, hammocks strung wherever there was space. Life here was tight, noisy, and often smelly. But every crew member had a role, and every role was crucial. Officers had cabins on the upper decks, slightly more comfortable but still cramped compared to modern standards, giving them just enough room to plan battles, write reports, or sneak a nap when the chaos of war allowed. The very top deck, the weather deck, was where most of the action happened. Sailors ran here to handle sails, ropes, and rigging, look out for enemy ships, or man the uppermost cannons. The deck itself was an intricate dance floor of ropes and pulleys. Rigging might look like a chaotic mess to the untrained eye, but it was actually a carefully organized network, each rope serving a specific purpose. Some controlled the sail's angle to catch the wind just right, others raised or lowered yards, and some secured cargo or weapons. A single misstep or mispulled rope could send a sail flapping wildly, losing precious speed or maneuverability in the middle of a battle. Sails were the heart of a ship like HMS Victory. Unlike modern vessels with engines, the ship relied entirely on wind power. Victory had multiple masts, main, fore, and mizzen, each towering high into the sky, rigged with square sails designed to capture every gust. Adjusting these sails required skill, timing, and sometimes brute strength. When a storm hit or during battle, sailors scrambled up the rigging to reef or furl sails, exposed to wind, rain, and the risk of falling into the ocean. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was the essence of naval life. Every movement mattered because the wind was both friend and foe. A well-trimmed sail could mean the difference between victory and disaster. Speaking of wind and movement, steering the ship was another art entirely. Unlike modern vessels with wheel-driven rudders, HMS Victory's steering relied on a massive tiller connected directly to the rudder. The tiller required a team of men to move it during maneuvers, especially in rough seas. Precision was vital. Turn too sharply, and the ship could lose balance or damage its rigging. Too slowly, and you might miss your chance to line up a broadside. Steering required both strength and an almost intuitive understanding of the ship's reactions to wind and waves. Now, let's talk about the ship's armament, because, after all, Victory was a warship. Cannons were arranged in rows on different decks, each with a specific range and purpose. The lower deck guns were typically heavier, capable of firing massive round shot over long distances to punch holes in enemy hulls. Middle and upper decks carried lighter guns for more rapid fire, targeting enemy crew or rigging. Loading a cannon was a precise, dangerous procedure. Gunpowder, wadding, and the shot had to be prepared carefully. Misfire could injure or kill the gun crew instantly. During battle, sailors worked in teams, shouting commands, swabbing barrels, ramming shot, and pulling lanyards to fire. Smoke, noise, and chaos dominated the decks, making coordination and discipline essential. But HMS Victory wasn't just about fighting. It was also about survival at sea. Supplies, water, and food had to be meticulously stored. Water was kept in barrels, which often turned stagnant or brackish after weeks at sea. Food relied on preserved items like salted meat, hardtack biscuits, dried legumes, and occasionally fresh fish or vegetables when near shore. Space was tight, so every barrel, every crate, had to be accounted for. Sailors developed a resilient gut for flavorless meals and learned to avoid scurvy through whatever means possible, including eating pickled vegetables or lime juice when available. Living conditions were cramped and unsanitary by modern standards. Sailors shared hammocks, washed rarely, and lived among rats and other vermin. Privacy was non-existent, and the air below decks was often thick with the combined smells of tar, sweat, salt, and gunpowder. Yet, despite these hardships, morale and discipline were maintained through a strict chain of command, camaraderie, and sometimes sheer necessity. Life on a warship was a delicate balance between chaos and order. Every sailor had a role, and if one person failed, it could jeopardize the entire ship. Communication on board was another vital element. With no radios or signal flags beyond visual cues, sailors relied on a mix of shouting orders, drum beats, and flags to convey instructions during battle. Each crew member needed to recognize and respond instantly to these signals. Misunderstanding could lead to disaster-friendly fire, lost maneuvering, or a poorly timed boarding attempt. A successful ship required not just strong timbers and cannon, but also a well-trained, disciplined, and coordinated crew who understood their roles as part of a larger machine. Then there were the captain and officers, who guided this floating fortress through treacherous waters and combat. The captain had ultimate authority, but relied heavily on lieutenants, midshipmen, and specialized roles, like the master navigational expert, or bosun, in charge of rigging and deckwork. Navigation itself was a science and an art. Celestial navigation using the sun, stars, and a sextant allowed captains to determine their position across vast oceans. Charts were meticulously updated, and dead reckoned estimating position based on speed, direction, and time was critical, especially when storms or fog obscured the sky. HMS Victory also carried smaller craft, launchers, pinnaces, and cutters. These were used to ferry men and supplies to shore, scout ahead, or even engage in boarding actions. They were nimble compared to the massive ship, but still required skill and coordination. Even these smaller boats played a role in the broader function of Victory as a weapon, a transport, and a home for hundreds of men. One cannot overlook the role of discipline and routine aboard such a vessel. Life was regimented, with the day divided into watches, each crew member knowing exactly when they were on duty. Meals, cleaning, drills, and maintenance all followed strict schedules. Sailors were constantly moving, whether handling sails, scrubbing decks, or repairing damage from wear or battle. This constant activity maintained the ship's readiness and ensured that, come battle or storm, HMS Victory could respond with efficiency and precision. Finally, we reached the symbolism of the ship itself. HMS Victory wasn't just a war machine. It was a statement of naval power, technological sophistication, and human ingenuity. Every beam, every cannon, every sail represented years of accumulated knowledge in shipbuilding, navigation, and naval warfare. The ship functioned as a living organism, with every part wood, rope, metal, and man working in harmony to achieve an extraordinary purpose. Understanding how Victory worked gives us insight not only into 18th century naval technology, but also into the lives, skills, and endurance of the people who kept her afloat, fighting, and alive. And so, standing on her deck, you realize that HMS Victory was more than wood and iron. It was a marvel of human engineering, a floating city, and a crucible of courage, discipline, and skill. Each rope, each cannon, each plank tells a story of innovation, hardship, and triumph. Understanding how she works is to appreciate the delicate balance of forces, both natural and human, that allowed her to dominate the seas in her time. As we continue our journey aboard HMS Victory, let's climb a little higher literally into the world of sails and rigging, where much of the ship's power and agility comes from. Imagine yourself standing at the base of one of the towering masts, craning your neck to see the canvas sails stretching skyward, flapping and snapping in the wind. To the untrained eye, the rigging looks like an impossibly tangled web, a chaotic network of ropes, pulleys, and spars. But to a seasoned sailor, every line has a purpose, every knot is a lifeline, and every sail is a tool of survival and war. Victory's rigging can be divided into two categories: standing rigging and running rigging. The standing rigging is permanent, holding the masts upright and supporting the entire superstructure. These thick, taut ropes are like the skeleton of the ship, bearing incredible loads and withstanding storms that could snap lesser ropes in half. Sailors inspecting standing rigging often used climbing irons to ascend the masts and check for frayed lines, loose shrouds, or weakened fittings. Maintenance here was constant. The sea is unforgiving, and a snapped shroud in the middle of battle could mean disaster. The running rigging, on the other hand, is all about movement. These ropes control the sails, raising and lowering them, trimming their angles, and adjusting tension to catch the wind just right. Picture a team of sailors hauling on a thick rope, sweat dripping down their faces, while another group swings out along a yard to secure the canvas. Timing and coordination are everything. If the crew doesn't trim the sails correctly, the ship could lose speed, lurch awkwardly, or fail to maneuver effectively during combat. Handling sails wasn't just physical labor, required skill, intuition, and an intimate understanding of wind, ship, and sea. Climbing the rigging, a sailor becomes acutely aware of the ship's height and vulnerability. From the tops of the masts, a lookout could see enemy ships approaching from miles away, or spot changes in the weather that might affect the day's journey. Life in the rigging was dangerous. A misstep meant falling into the ocean, often to a certain death or at least serious injury. Yet, sailors embraced these heights, guided by the knowledge that without vigilant lookouts, the ship could be taken by surprise, or worse, grounded on hidden reefs. Each sail on Victory had a distinct role. The massive square sails on the main mast and foremast provided the bulk of forward propulsion. Smaller sails, like jibs and staysails, helped with steering and balance. Reefing the sails, reducing their area in strong winds, was essential to prevent the ship from heeling over dangerously or snapping masts. Furling sails in preparation for a battle or a storm required entire teams, coordinated with drills and shouted commands, each man knowing his exact task. Watching this ballet of ropes, yards, and canvas unfold is like witnessing a choreographed performance, executed at sea and under immense pressure. Now, let's shift below deck for a moment to the human engine of HMS Victory. Hundreds of men powered this wooden giant, each performing essential duties. Life below decks was a mixture of routine, labor, and discipline. Sailors were assigned watches, shifts that divided the 24-hour day, ensuring that work, maintenance, and defense were continuous. During a watch, a sailor might be scrubbing the deck, repairing, rigging, handling ammunition, or standing lookout. Work was grueling and often monotonous, but it was the structure that allowed the ship to function efficiently. Discipline on Victory was strict, but fairness and hierarchy kept chaos at bay. The captain's word was law, yet he depended on a chain of command. Lieutenants, midshipmen, the master, the boatswain, and various petty officers. Each position had responsibilities that ensured the smooth operation of the ship. For example, the boatswain or bosun oversaw the rigging, sails, and deck maintenance, directing sailors with a combination of shouted orders and the rhythmic sounds of a bosun's whistle. The master navigated, plotting courses and measuring speed, wind, and currents, translating celestial observations into practical instructions. During battle, every crew member's role became magnified. The gun crews had to load, aim, and fire cannons with deadly precision, often under enemy fire and amid smoke, noise, and chaos. Each gun required a team, a gun captain giving orders, a loader ramming shot and powder into the barrel, a sponger wiping out remnants of previous rounds, and sailors operating tackles to maneuver the heavy gun. Timing was crucial to slow, and the enemy might gain the advantage. Too fast, and mistakes could injure or kill men instantly. Even the smallest details mattered in battle. Powder monkeys, often young boys, ran up and down between decks carrying gunpowder from the magazine to the gun decks. They had to move swiftly and carefully, for a single spark could ignite the entire supply. Sailors were also responsible for damage control, plugging leaks, patching splintered timbers, and extinguishing fires. The crew's survival depended on skill, courage, and coordination, turning the ship into a well-oiled war machine that was as much about human precision as it was about wood and iron. HMS Victory's design itself was a testament to naval ingenuity. Her whole shape, rigging configuration, and armament layout were all optimized for battle and maneuverability. The ship could sail relatively close to the wind, allowing it to approach or retreat strategically, while her firepower could dominate enemy vessels of similar size. Every cannon port, every deck beam, every piece of timber was calculated for function and efficiency, balancing the immense weight of cannons, supplies, and crew against the need for speed and stability. But a warship is only as effective as its crew's ability to live and function aboard it. Food and water were rationed, and preservation methods were primitive by modern standards. Hardtack biscuits were a staple, rock hard, and nearly inedible without soaking in water or soup, but they kept men alive. Salted meat, dried peas, and shipboard beer supplemented the diet. Scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C, was a constant threat, mitigated by whatever fresh produce could be obtained at ports or from the limited stock of pickled vegetables. Hygiene was basic at best, yet sailors adapted to the conditions, maintaining just enough cleanliness to prevent outbreaks of disease. Living quarters were crowded, especially below decks. Hammocks were strung side by side, with barely enough room for movement. Privacy was non-existent, and personal belongings were minimal. The stench of sweat, tar, salt, and unwashed bodies permeated the air. Yet, camaraderie and shared hardship forged strong bonds. Sailors developed a sense of community, learning to rely on one another for survival, support, and morale. Stories, songs, and practical jokes provided small relief from the relentless labor and confinement, bringing moments of humanity to an otherwise harsh environment. Navigation and steering were another crucial component of ship operation. The captain relied on the master and midshipmen to keep the vessel on course. Sextants, compasses, and log lines allowed navigators to estimate position, speed, and direction. Clouds or storms could complicate readings, so experience and intuition often guided decisions. Steering the massive tiller required strength and coordination, especially during heavy seas or battle maneuvers. Sailors worked in teams, adjusting the ship's angle to the wind and enemy, while keeping her stable and on course. Victory also carried a range of smaller boats, launchers, pinnaces, and cutters, each serving strategic and practical purposes. These smaller craft could ferry men and supplies to shore, scout ahead, or engage in boarding actions. They were extensions of the ship, allowing the crew to operate with flexibility and precision. Their deployment required coordination, timing, and careful navigation, especially in combat or rough seas. Even these relatively simple boats played a vital role in the ship's overall strategy and effectiveness. Maintenance was a continuous, all-encompassing task aboard HMS Victory. Sailors repaired sails, replaced worn ropes, patched leaks, cleaned decks, and preserved the wooden hull. Carpenters and shipwrights were constantly at work, ensuring the ship remained seaworthy even after weeks or months at sea. A neglected deck or masts could result in disaster during a storm or engagement. Every member of the crew contributed to upkeep, understanding that their survival depended on the ship's integrity. And then there's the rhythm of life. Watches, drills, meals, and sleep all followed strict schedules. Life at sea demanded discipline and endurance. Sailors became attuned to the ship's movements, the wind's shifts, and the signals of officers. Even in the midst of battle, the structured routine allowed the crew to function efficiently, transforming a chaotic environment into a well-coordinated machine of war. Victory's legacy lies not only in her victories or her role in famous naval battles, but also in the ingenuity of her design and the resilience of her crew. Every beam, rope, sail, and cannon reflects centuries of shipbuilding knowledge and practical experience. Understanding how she worked gives us insight into the technological, social, and human aspects of 18th century naval life. She was more than a ship. She was a testament to human creativity, endurance, and the relentless pursuit of mastery over both sea and warfare. Now that we've explored life aboard HMS Victory and the intricate dance of sails, rigging, and navigation, it's time to turn our attention to what made this ship truly legendary: battle. Naval combat in the 18th century was an art form, a carefully choreographed, high-stakes game of strategy, timing, and precision. Victory wasn't just a vessel, she was a weapon, a floating fortress designed to dominate her enemies, and every plank, rope, and cannon played a role in the deadly theater of war. Imagine the tension aboard as the lookout spots an enemy ship on the horizon. The captain ascends to the quarterdeck, peering through his telescope, calculating distance, wind direction, and speed. Orders ripple through the crew, shouted, flagged, or blown through the bosun's whistle. Every man knows his station, every cannon is prepared, and every rope is ready for action. In these moments, the ship transforms from a living, breathing home into a machine of war, a lethal symphony of human effort and engineering. Cannon fire was the heart of naval combat. Victory carried dozens of guns across multiple decks, each requiring a skilled team to operate efficiently. Loading a cannon was an exacting process. The barrel had to be swabbed to extinguish embers from the previous shot. Powder and wadding, loaded with precise measurements, shot rammed home, and the gun aimed accurately. Smoke and noise filled the decks during battle, obscuring vision and testing nerves. The coordination required was staggering. A single misstep could injure or kill crew members instantly, but well-trained teams could fire broadsides with terrifying efficiency, sending iron balls tearing through enemy hulls. The layout of Victory's cannons was strategic. Heavier guns on the lower decks could punch through thick holes at long range, while lighter upper-deck guns targeted rigging, sails, or exposed crew. The sequence and timing of firing mattered. Broadsides were planned to deliver maximum damage while conserving ammunition and maintaining control over the battlefield. Reloading and aiming under the stress of battle demanded discipline, muscle, and nerves of steel. Sailors moved with practiced precision, each step a part of a deadly dance orchestrated by the officers above. Signaling was another critical component of combat. Without radios, Victory relied on flags, lanterns, and even gunfire to communicate with Allied ships. Commands, like "form line ahead" or "prepare to board," had to be recognized instantly and executed without hesitation. Misreading a signal could leave a ship isolated, vulnerable, or out of position, often with catastrophic consequences. Officers and midshipmen had to memorize hundreds of signals and coordinate across decks and vessels, ensuring that every maneuver was precise and effective. Boarding was the most personal and terrifying aspect of naval warfare. If Victory closed with an enemy vessel, sailors could be called upon to board, fighting hand-to-hand with swords, pistols, and cutlasses. Decks became chaotic arenas of combat, splintered wood, and smoke obscuring vision. Fear and adrenaline surged as men fought not just for victory, but for survival. The courage required in these moments is almost unimaginable by modern standards. Yet these actions were routine for a well-drilled crew. Every sailor had to be ready to defend or attack, with life and death hanging in the balance. Damage control was another essential task during battle. Even a well-built ship like Victory could take punishment from enemy fire. Sailors patched holes, bailed water, extinguished fires, and repaired rigging while under attack. Teams trained in these emergency procedures moved quickly and efficiently, often working in dangerous, cramped conditions. The ability to respond to damage separated ships that could endure a prolonged engagement from those doomed to sink. Victory's design, with watertight bulkheads and reinforced hulls, maximized her resilience, but it was human skill that kept her afloat and fighting. The captain played a central role in orchestrating these engagements. Observing from the quarterdeck, he analyzed the enemy's formation, wind conditions, and the ship's own capabilities. Orders were precise. Adjust sails, angle the ship for optimal broadside, focus fire on specific targets. The captain's decisions could determine the outcome of the battle, and every officer and sailor depended on clear leadership. Victory's legendary status was built not only on her design, but also on the skill and judgment of those who commanded her. Crew coordination extended beyond combat roles. Sailors had to manage supplies, water, and ammunition even amid the chaos of battle. Powder monkeys ran up and down decks, ensuring that gun crews never ran dry. Officers checked calculations, adjusted firing sequences, and coordinated with Allied ships. Even the seemingly mundane tasks, hoisting sails, securing ropes, monitoring the hull became vital, each contributing to the ship's overall effectiveness as a weapon. Life aboard during extended campaigns added another layer of complexity. Weeks or months at sea meant that maintenance, hygiene, and morale were ongoing concerns. Sailors cleaned decks, repaired sails, and maintained cannons between battles, ensuring readiness for the next engagement. Food was rationed and carefully stored, and scurvy prevention was a constant priority. Despite these hardships, camaraderie, music, and storytelling provided relief, reinforcing bonds and sustaining morale. A well-fed, well-rested, and disciplined crew could make the difference between victory and defeat. Victory's maneuverability was remarkable for a ship of her size. Skilled officers could execute complex tacks, wear maneuvers, and changes of course with precision, allowing her to position herself advantageously against enemies. The coordination between helmsmen, sail handlers, and lookouts was critical. Even slight errors in timing or angle could cost speed or expose the ship to enemy fire. Sailing such a massive vessel required not just strength, but an almost instinctive understanding of the interplay between wind, water, and weight. Every element of HMS Victory, from hull to rigging, cannons to crew, was designed for efficiency and survivability. The ship was both a technological marvel and a human endeavor, dependent on skilled artisans, disciplined sailors, and inspired leadership. The interplay of human and mechanical systems allowed her to dominate the seas, maintain supply lines, and project power across oceans. Observing Victory in action is witnessing a living example of the synergy between engineering and human skill, a floating ecosystem of precision and coordination. And yet, despite all this preparation and discipline, the unpredictability of the sea in combat always loomed. Storms, shifting winds, hidden shoals, and human error posed constant threats. Sailors had to adapt quickly, using experience, intuition, and teamwork to survive. The ship's design minimized risks, but ultimately, it was the crew's courage, ingenuity, and resilience that allowed HMS Victory to fulfill her role as a dominant warship of her era. Understanding naval tactics and combat on Victory also means appreciating the broader context of 18th century warfare. Ships didn't fight in isolation. Fleets operated in coordinated formations, supporting each other and executing complex strategies over vast distances. Victory's actions were part of a larger naval doctrine that balanced offense, defense, reconnaissance, and communication. Every decision, from maneuvering to firing, had strategic implications, affecting not only the ship, but the entire fleet. Training was continuous, even in peacetime. Drills kept sailors sharp, ensuring that every man knew his role during battle. Cannons were loaded and fired during exercises, sails were trimmed, and damage control procedures practiced. Repetition instilled muscle memory and discipline, reducing errors when the stakes were highest. Victory's readiness depended on this relentless practice, turning a large, potentially unwieldy ship into a precise instrument of war. Above all, the human element was paramount. Victory's design could only do so much. It was the skill, courage, and cooperation of her crew that made her legendary. Every sailor, from the youngest powder monkey to the most seasoned gun captain, contributed to the ship's effectiveness. They lived, worked, and fought in close quarters, forming bonds that sustained them through storms, battles, and long stretches of monotony. Life aboard Victory was harsh, but it was also a testament to human endurance, adaptability, and teamwork. As we reflect on the mechanics of battle, we can also appreciate the elegance of Victory's engineering. Cannons were not just weapons, they were integrated into the ship's design, positioned for balance, stability, and maximum effect. Sails and rigging allowed for precise maneuvering, while the hull provided resilience and buoyancy. Every detail, from the thickness of planks to the angle of a yard, was optimized for performance. Victory was not merely a collection of parts. She was a carefully designed system, a fusion of technology and human effort, capable of shaping history on the open seas. Finally, the psychological aspect of naval warfare aboard Victory cannot be understated. The sheer size, firepower, and reputation of the ship could intimidate enemies even before a cannon fired. Discipline and morale within the crew were equally important. Fear, exhaustion, and injury were constant companions. Yet the shared purpose and structured environment allowed sailors to function effectively under extreme stress. The ship became a microcosm of order amidst chaos, a testament to human ingenuity, discipline, and resilience. Beyond the thunder of cannon fire and the chaos of battle, much of life aboard HMS Victory revolved around the art and science of navigation. The open ocean in the 18th century was vast and unpredictable, and a single miscalculation could leave a ship stranded on a hidden shoal or lost for weeks. For the crew of Victory, navigation wasn't a casual task, it was the lifeblood of survival and the key to strategic advantage. The captain and master relied heavily on celestial navigation. Using tools like the sextant, quadrant, and astrolabe, they measured the angles of the sun, moon, and stars relative to the horizon to determine latitude. Longitude, a far trickier calculation, was estimated through dead reckoning, recording speed, direction, and time, often using a log line and sandglass to measure distance traveled. These calculations demanded precision, patience, and constant vigilance. Mistakes could be fatal, especially near reefs, coastlines, or enemy waters. Sailors watched the sky and sea with trained eyes, reading subtle shifts in clouds, wind, and currents to predict the weather and guide the ship's course. Life during long voyages was a delicate balance between routine and survival. Weeks at sea blurred into months. Sailors woke to the bell signaling their watch, climbing out of hammocks in the cramped, dimly lit lower decks. Breakfast, or more often, a meager meal of hardtack and salted meat, was consumed quickly before returning to duties. Deck scrubbing, sail repairs, rigging inspections, and drills filled the day, punctuated by lookout rotations and navigational checks. Even when not engaged in battle, the work was relentless, and every sailor contributed to the continuous operation of the ship. Maintaining supplies was critical. Fresh water was stored in barrels, carefully rationed, and occasionally rotated to minimize contamination. Food preservation techniques were primitive, relying on salting, drying, and pickling. Despite these efforts, monotony and scarcity were constant companions. Sailors grew accustomed to flavorless meals and the occasional rot or infestation in provisions. Yet, ingenuity and adaptability kept crews functioning. Catching fish, foraging when near land, or trading at friendly ports supplemented the limited stores aboard Victory. Hygiene, though basic, was another crucial aspect of life at sea. Scurvy, lice, and dysentery were ever-present threats. Sailors washed with seawater when possible, laundered clothes infrequently, and tried to keep living spaces as clean as cramped conditions allowed. The lower decks, often damp and dim, required constant attention to prevent rot and mold. Carpenters and shipwrights were invaluable in maintaining structural integrity, repairing damage from storms, wear, and the constant battering of the sea. Every plank repaired, every rope replaced, contributed to the safety and efficiency of the ship. Weather was perhaps the most unpredictable force faced by Victory's crew. Storms could appear suddenly, whipping waves into towering walls of water. Handling the ship in heavy seas required coordination and courage. Sails were reefed or furled, ballast shifted, and the rudder adjusted to maintain stability. Sailors climbed rigging in driving rain and whipping wind, securing canvas and lines to prevent catastrophic damage. The deck became a treacherous place, slick with water, with ropes and gear, threatening to trip or ensnare. In these moments, the ship was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. A massive wooden organism battling the immense power of nature. Navigating storms tested every sailor's skill. Lookouts scanned the horizon for signs of squalls, clouds, or shifting winds. Officers measured wind direction and adjusted sails to optimize speed while maintaining control. The helmsman fought the tiller with strength and precision, coordinating with deck crews to respond to every surge and lurch of the ship. Below decks, sailors secured cargo, reinforced bulkheads, and monitored water ingress. Even small errors, a poorly tied rope, a misjudged maneuver, could have severe consequences, risking injury, loss of supplies, or even capsizing. The ship's rigging played a crucial role in storm management. Every line had a purpose, and crews trained for rapid response. Climbing yards to furl sails in high winds required balance, strength, and nerves of steel. Failure wasn't just embarrassing, it could be deadly. Yet, these moments also demonstrated the remarkable coordination and resilience of the crew. Each sailor, performing his specialized role, ensured the ship could ride out storms that might destroy lesser vessels. Victory's design, with a deep keel and robust hull, provided stability, but it was human skill that preserved her through relentless weather. Communication during storms relied on a combination of shouts, whistles, and pre-established routines. Officers directed from elevated positions, using signals to coordinate teams across the ship. Drills in calmer seas prepared the crew for these extreme conditions, reinforcing muscle memory and discipline. Every sailor knew exactly what to do when the wind picked up or waves crashed over the deck, and this preparation often meant the difference between survival and disaster. Even routine operations became challenges in harsh weather. Cooking had to continue, even in a rocking galley. Meals were simple but essential for maintaining strength. Water rationing became critical when barrels sloshed and spilled. Maintenance work didn't stop. Sails had to be repaired, holes checked for leaks, and cannons secured to prevent movement that could damage decks or injure crew. Life at sea demanded adaptability, endurance, and constant vigilance. Victory's crew exemplified these qualities, transforming the ship into a resilient, living system capable of facing both natural and human threats. Life below decks during long voyages was a mixture of monotony and tension. Sailors slept in hammocks that swung with the motion of the ship, often waking to the creak of timbers, the slap of waves against the hull, or the distant sound of bells signaling a new watch. Personal space was minimal, privacy non-existent. Yet, the shared hardships created a sense of community. Stories, songs, and practical jokes helped pass the time, easing the psychological strain of confinement and constant labor. These small rituals provided relief, strengthening bonds among men who depended on each other for survival. Health was another constant concern. Disease spread easily in the close quarters of the ship. Sailors were trained to recognize early signs of illness, and officers maintained strict protocols for isolating sick crew members when possible. Remedies were primitive, relying on herbal treatments, limited medical knowledge, and vigilance. Despite these limitations, crews often managed to maintain reasonable health, a testament to both the resilience of the human body and the structured routines that minimized risk. Victory's voyages were not just about survival, they were also about strategic objectives. Mapping unknown coastlines, transporting troops, and projecting naval power required careful planning. The captain and master coordinated routes, balancing speed, safety, and readiness for combat. Every decision affected not only the ship but also the fleet and broader military campaigns. The stakes were high, and the successful execution of these plans relied on a combination of technology, skill, and human cooperation. During long periods at sea, morale became as important as physical readiness. Sailors engaged in routine maintenance, drills, and communal activities to stay occupied. Music, storytelling, and informal competitions provided relief from monotony. Celebrations, when land was sighted or a successful mission accomplished, strengthened bonds and reinforced the sense of purpose that carried the crew through weeks of isolation and hardship. Victory's effectiveness was as much about the spirit and coordination of her crew as it was about her cannons and sails. Even small details mattered on extended voyages. Ropes had to be checked and replaced, sails repaired, and the hull inspected for damage. Water barrels were rotated to prevent contamination, and provisions carefully inventoried to avoid shortages. Every sailor contributed to these tasks, understanding that their collective effort maintained the ship's integrity and ensured mission success. Victory's design made these tasks manageable, but it was human diligence and teamwork that kept the ship operational day after day, week after week, and month after month. Navigating uncharted waters demanded constant observation and judgment. Currents, tides, and wind shifts could alter the ship's path significantly. Officers calculated adjustments, communicated plans, and ensured that sailors executed maneuvers precisely. Even minor miscalculations could result in running aground or encountering enemy forces unprepared. Celestial navigation, observation, and dead reckoning were the crew's guides, blending science, experience, and intuition in a delicate balance of knowledge and skill. HMS Victory's success in these conditions was a testament to both design and human ingenuity. Her hull, rigging, and sails were engineered to withstand the forces of the ocean. Her crew, trained, disciplined, and adaptable, executed maneuvers, maintained the ship, and ensured readiness for combat. Together, they formed a system in which every action, no matter how small, contributed to the overall survival and effectiveness of the ship. Understanding life aboard Victory during extended voyages highlights the extraordinary coordination and resilience required to navigate, survive, and succeed on the high seas. As we settle into the rhythms of life aboard HMS Victory, it becomes clear that every day at sea was a blend of routine, responsibility, and human drama. The ship functioned like a small, self-contained society, with hierarchy, rules, and roles that kept hundreds of men alive, productive, and ready for action. From the captain down to the youngest midshipman, everyone had a specific place in this floating world, and the smooth operation of the ship depended on cooperation and discipline. At the top of this hierarchy stood the captain, the ultimate authority on board. The captain wasn't just a figurehead. He made the critical decisions that determined the ship's fate. Whether navigating treacherous waters, engaging enemy vessels, or responding to storms, his judgment shaped every outcome. Captains often combine natural leadership with deep knowledge of seamanship, navigation, and strategy. They had to inspire confidence, maintain discipline, and occasionally enforce it through strict punishment. A well-respected captain could motivate the crew to perform feats of skill and endurance that seemed almost impossible. Supporting the captain were the lieutenants and officers, each responsible for different aspects of the ship's operation. The first lieutenant, essentially the captain's second-in-command, oversaw daily routines, crew discipline, and ensured that orders were executed promptly. Other lieutenants managed watches, supervised maintenance, and coordinated battle stations. Midshipmen, young men training for command, learned by observation and practice, gradually acquiring the skills needed to lead themselves. This chain of command maintained order and efficiency in an environment that could easily descend into chaos. The master was another crucial figure aboard Victory. Responsible for navigation and the ship's handling, the master guided the vessel through both calm seas and stormy waters, using charts, compasses, sextants, and dead reckoning. He calculated the ship's position and plotted courses. In combination with the captain's orders, the master ensured that Victory stayed on track, avoided hazards, and reached strategic destinations. His expertise was essential during long voyages, when the ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, and a single miscalculation could spell disaster. Beneath the officers, a network of petty officers, skilled craftsmen, and specialized roles ensured the ship's continuous function. The bosun or bosun managed the rigging, sails, and deckwork, issuing orders with a combination of authority and the sharp notes of a bosun's whistle. Carpenters repaired the hull, masts, and spars, while sailmakers patched canvas torn by wind or battle. Gunners maintained and operated the ship's artillery, ensuring that cannons were ready at a moment's notice. Even the cook, while perhaps underappreciated, played a critical role in sustaining the crew's strength and morale with limited and often unpalatable ingredients. Daily routines were regimented to maintain efficiency. The day was divided into watches, usually for hour shifts, ensuring that essential tasks, navigation, maintenance, lookout, and security were continuous. Sailors rose with the bell, signaling their watch, performing morning duties such as deck, scrubbing, rope inspection, and sail adjustment. Meals were taken quickly, often in shifts to ensure that work continued uninterrupted. Drills were common, preparing the crew for emergencies ranging from man-overboard situations to full-scale battle. This structure created order, even amid the monotony and challenges of life at sea. Discipline was strict but essential. Infractions could range from minor neglect of duty to disobedience or cowardice in battle. Punishments varied, from extra labor and confinement to flogging, depending on severity. Discipline wasn't arbitrary. It was the mechanism that ensured the crew functioned as a single, efficient unit. The threat of punishment kept men alert, motivated, and cooperative, reducing the risk of errors that could endanger everyone on board. Yet, life aboard Victory wasn't only about work and discipline. Sailors found ways to create moments of leisure and camaraderie. Storytelling, music, and games helped pass the time during long stretches at sea. Songs echoed through the rigging as sailors climbed yards or hauled lines, reinforcing rhythm and coordination while lifting spirits. Practical jokes and friendly competitions, whether in rope tying speed or knot tying skill, provided entertainment while also improving essential skills. These moments of levity were vital, sustaining morale in an environment that could otherwise be harsh and relentless. Sleeping arrangements reflected the ship's social and functional hierarchy. Ordinary sailors slept in hammocks, strung closely together, often on the lower decks. Space was limited, privacy non-existent, and hammocks swayed with the motion of the ship. Officers had cabins on the upper decks, providing slightly more comfort and space but still modest compared to modern standards. These living arrangements reinforced the social order and allowed the ship to accommodate hundreds of men efficiently within a confined space. Meal preparation and food storage were also central to daily life. The ship's cook worked with limited supplies: salted meat, dried peas, hardtack, and occasionally fresh provisions. Water was rationed and stored in barrels, carefully rotated to minimize spoilage. Preservation methods were primitive, so sailors had to adapt to bland or spoiled food. Despite these limitations, mealtime was a critical ritual, providing nourishment and a brief pause in the relentless rhythm of labor. Maintenance and repair were never-ending. Sailors inspected the hull for leaks, scrubbed decks to prevent rot, and repaired rigging and sails. Cannons were cleaned and tested, and supplies carefully inventoried. Every small action contributed to the overall safety and functionality of the ship. Even minor negligence could lead to catastrophic results, whether in battle, during storms, or simply in maintaining a seaworthy vessel. Victory's success depended on the meticulous attention of each crew member to every detail. Preparation for battle was another daily concern. Sailors practiced loading and firing cannons, handling boarding equipment, and executing emergency maneuvers. Officers drilled the crew in formations, signaling, and coordinated actions. By the time Victory engaged in actual combat, the crew had internalized procedures through repetition and discipline. The outcome of a battle often depended not only on the ship's design, but on the crew's training, coordination, and resilience under pressure. Interactions among crew members were shaped by hierarchy, experience, and shared hardship. Senior sailors mentored younger men, teaching skills, traditions, and practical knowledge. Bonds formed quickly, as survival depended on trust and cooperation. Conflicts arose, as in any society, but the ship's strict rules, combined with shared purpose, often mitigated disputes. Mutual reliance fostered loyalty, solidarity, and a sense of identity that extended beyond individual duties. Victory also relied on a system of signals to coordinate actions across the ship and with other vessels in the fleet. Flags, lanterns, and whistles conveyed commands quickly and efficiently, ensuring that complex maneuvers were executed in unison. Every sailor needed to recognize and respond to these signals instantly. Miscommunication could be disastrous, especially during battle or in difficult navigational conditions. The entire crew functioned as a single organism, each member responding to cues and performing specialized tasks in harmony with others. Every day aboard Victory highlighted the delicate balance between labor, discipline, and adaptation. Sailors navigated, maintained the ship, trained for battle, and endured the hardships of confinement, weather, and limited resources. Each element of daily life reinforced the functionality of the ship as a whole. Routine was not monotony. It was the lifeline that allowed hundreds of men to operate a massive, complex warship across unpredictable oceans. Understanding the roles and interactions aboard Victory illuminates the human dimension of this floating fortress. The ship's design provided the framework, but it was the skill, endurance, and cooperation of the crew that brought her to life. Each sailor, from the youngest powder monkey to the most seasoned officer, contributed to a system that combined engineering, strategy, and human resourcefulness. The daily routines, discipline, and camaraderie of life aboard shaped both the effectiveness of the ship and the character of those who served on her. Finally, daily routines extended to preparation for arrivals in ports. Whether for resupply, repairs, or diplomatic missions, officers coordinated navigation, crew readiness, and maintenance in anticipation of docking. Sailors secured lines, prepared boats, and ensured that all cargo and equipment were accounted for. Every step required coordination, skill, and attention to detail, reinforcing the intricate system of operations that made Victory both a home and a formidable weapon. Through the lens of daily life aboard HMS Victory, we begin to see the full picture of her genius, a combination of human ingenuity, discipline, and endurance, merged with brilliant naval architecture. Every routine, no matter how small, served a purpose, ensuring that this floating city, war machine, and marvel of engineering remained ready to dominate the seas. It is this delicate balance between structure and adaptability, between labor and life, that allowed Victory to become legendary, not only as a ship of war, but as a living testament to human skill, endurance, and cooperation. Having established the rhythms of daily life aboard HMS Victory, we now turn once again to the ship's most formidable aspect, her firepower. Cannons were the heartbeat of naval combat, and operating them required discipline, precision, and teamwork on a scale few modern people can truly imagine. Victory carried dozens of guns across multiple decks, each with specific sizes, ranges, and purposes. To understand how the ship worked in battle, we must explore the meticulous choreography of loading, aiming, and firing these instruments of destruction. The cannon crew was highly specialized, typically composed of 5 to 6 men per gun. Each had a defined role, and success depended on everyone performing their tasks flawlessly. The gun captain oversaw the operation, directing the crew and ensuring timing was perfect. The loader rammed powder and shot into the barrel. The sponger wiped out residual embers from previous firings to prevent premature ignition, and the gunner adjusted elevation and aim. Other crew members handled tackles and ropes, maneuvering the heavy cannon into position or absorbing recoil after a discharge. Every step followed a precise rhythm, practiced endlessly in drills, so that during combat, the crew's movements became second nature. Safety was paramount, though accidents were tragically common. A misloaded cannon could explode, injuring or killing crew members and damaging the ship. Sparks from the gunpowder could ignite loose powder elsewhere, creating a cascading hazard. Discipline and attention to detail saved lives. Sailors memorized every sequence, every motion, every signal, so that even in the chaos of battle amid smoke, noise, and fear they could operate effectively and minimize risk. Ammunition handling added another layer of complexity. Powder was stored deep in the ship's magazine, a heavily reinforced space to prevent accidental explosions. Powder monkeys, often boys as young as 10, carried measured charges from the magazine to the gun decks, running amid the chaos with remarkable speed and care. Every movement was calculated. A dropped pouch could ignite a catastrophe. Their role was perilous but essential, keeping the guns firing at the relentless tempo required to dominate an enemy ship. Once the cannons were loaded and aimed, firing them was an awe-inspiring spectacle. The thunderous roar echoed across the water, sending shockwaves through the deck. Iron balls tore through enemy hulls, shattering timbers, splintering decks, and wreaking havoc among opposing crews. Smoke, dust, and fire filled the air, reducing visibility and adding to the tension. The rhythm of broadsides, a coordinated volley from one side of the ship, was designed to maximize damage while maintaining defensive readiness. Timing was everything. A poorly coordinated broadside could leave gaps in firepower or expose the ship to return shots. Naval tactics in this era were a combination of maneuvering and firepower. Ships formed lines of battle, presenting their broadsides while protecting vulnerable bow and stern. Victory's captain calculated angles, wind, and distance to position the ship optimally, allowing her to fire effectively while minimizing exposure. Fleet coordination amplified these tactics. A single ship's decisions had consequences not only for itself but for the entire formation. Signal flags, lanterns, and predetermined procedures enabled complex maneuvers to unfold across multiple vessels, each acting in concert with the others. Boarding was another terrifying aspect of combat. If Victory came close to an enemy, sailors could be called to engage in hand-to-hand combat, storming the opposing deck with cutlasses, pistols, and boarding axes. Officers led these dangerous operations, while ordinary sailors relied on strength, speed, and courage. The chaos was absolute. Smoke, shouting, splintered wood, and injured men filled the decks. Survival depended on skill, coordination, and sheer will. Boarding was often decisive, allowing Victory to capture enemy vessels or force surrender when firepower alone could not achieve victory. Damage control during combat was continuous and exhausting. Even a well-built ship like Victory could be hauled below the waterline, have rigging torn to shreds, or suffer mast damage from enemy fire. Crews patched holes, bled water from the lower decks, extinguished fires, and cleared debris while continuing to fight. Teams of sailors moved between decks and exposed positions, balancing urgency and danger. Their skill and endurance were as vital as the cannons themselves. A damaged ship that could not be stabilized quickly was vulnerable to sinking or capture. Victory's design supported this intense combat environment. The hull was reinforced to withstand cannon fire, and the arrangement of gun decks allowed for overlapping fields of fire. Lower deck guns targeted enemy hulls, upper deck cannons aimed for sails and rigging, and lighter swivel guns provided protection against small boats or boarding parties. Every element was optimized for maximum efficiency and adaptability, ensuring that Victory could maintain her offensive and defensive capabilities in a variety of scenarios. Crew coordination extended beyond individual guns. The timing of broadsides, the positioning of sails for optimal maneuverability, and the execution of repairs all required synchronization across the ship. Officers monitored every movement, issuing commands that had to be immediately understood and acted upon. Even minor errors, a delayed response, a misread signal, or a misaligned cannon could have catastrophic consequences. The success of HMS Victory in battle was as much about human coordination as it was about iron and wood. Storms at sea could complicate combat even further. Rough waters affected the stability of the ship, the accuracy of cannon fire, and the safety of sailors. Skilled helmsmen adjusted the tiller to compensate for waves, while crews adapted to the rolling deck, securing themselves and their equipment. Even amid enemy fire, the ship's crew had to maintain operational readiness, demonstrating a remarkable blend of skill, courage, and adaptability. Victory's design provided stability, but it was the crew's vigilance and experience that kept her functional under extreme conditions. The psychological demands of battle were intense. Fear, exhaustion, and the constant threat of injury or death challenged even the most seasoned sailors. Officers maintained discipline through structured procedures, repetition, and clear command. Trust among crew members was critical. Each man depended on his comrades to perform their roles precisely. This cohesion transformed the ship into a single, efficient unit capable of extraordinary feats under pressure. After action, the work didn't stop. Casualties had to be treated, damage repaired, and ammunition replenished. Sailors assessed structural integrity, checked for leaks, and ensured that all equipment was ready for the next engagement. Even victories required vigilance. The ocean remained unpredictable, and enemy ships could return or reinforcements arrive. Life aboard Victory was a continuous cycle of preparation, action, and maintenance, with no room for complacency. The human element remained central throughout. Even the most perfectly designed ship relied on the skill, endurance, and cooperation of her crew. Victory's success was not an accident of engineering alone. It was the product of training, discipline, and collective effort. Every sailor, from the youngest powder monkey to the most experienced gun captain, contributed to the ship's formidable capabilities. Understanding this dynamic gives us insight into why HMS Victory became a legend. She was as much a monument to human skill as to naval architecture. After the intensity of battle or long stretches at sea, HMS Victory would eventually approach port, a place of relative respite and crucial operations. Life at port presented a different set of challenges and routines, combining logistics, diplomacy, maintenance, and opportunities for the crew to stretch legs that had been confined below decks for weeks or months. Ports were not merely stops along a voyage, they were lifelines, offering supplies, fresh water, repairs, and a chance to recover morale. As Victory entered a harbor, officers and crew would spring into action. Lines were cast to mooring posts, anchors dropped, and sails secured. The first lieutenant and boatswain oversaw the deck operations, ensuring that the ship was safely berthed. Sailors, accustomed to motion and the rolling of the open sea, had to adapt to a more stable, yet bustling environment. Movement on deck changed, with cargo handling, supplies unloading, and shore-bound boats adding to the busy atmosphere. Every action, though slower and less dangerous than a storm or battle, required careful coordination. Resupply was one of the most important tasks at port. Fresh water and provisions were loaded, sometimes replacing week-old rations that had begun to spoil. Meat, vegetables, grains, and sometimes luxuries for the officers' mess were brought aboard. Gunpowder and ammunition were checked and replenished. Sailors might help haul barrels and crates, often working alongside dock workers and local laborers. Even routine tasks required efficiency. A delay in resupply could affect the ship's readiness for upcoming voyages or battles. Maintenance at port went beyond what could be managed at sea. The hull could be careened or inspected for damage below the waterline. Repairs made to planking, masts, or rigging, and paint or tar applied to protect wood from the elements. Carpenters, sailmakers, and riggers often worked side by side, their tools clanging and canvas flapping in the wind. These periods of repair and upkeep were essential for the long-term effectiveness and survival of the ship. Without proper attention, even a well-built warship could degrade rapidly. Port visits also offered a chance for diplomacy and official business. Officers might meet local officials, negotiate trade, or exchange intelligence with allied navies. Ships like Victory were symbols of national power, and the presence of a formidable warship could influence relations, deter threats, or project strength. Even everyday interactions, from customs inspections to supply negotiations, required careful handling. Officers needed tact, patience, and awareness of political context. For the ordinary sailors, port life was a welcome reprieve. They could stretch their legs, enjoy fresh air, and occasionally explore the town. Taverns, markets, and streets offered a contrast to the cramped, smoky, and relentless environment of the ship. Sailors might buy small personal items, exchange news with locals, or simply enjoy a taste of freedom. While discipline remained important, shore leave allowed men to recover physically and mentally, strengthening morale for the next leg of the voyage. However, port life had its hazards. Sailors unaccustomed to city streets could find themselves in fights, arrested for misconduct, or taken advantage of by opportunists. The officers maintained oversight, balancing the need for rest with the importance of discipline. Reports of crew behavior were monitored, and punishments could follow misbehavior on shore. Maintaining order, even in relative freedom, was essential for the overall cohesion of the ship's company. During these stays, Victory's officers also took time to plan for the next voyage. Charts were updated, courses plotted, and contingencies considered. Repairs and supply decisions were made with precision, ensuring the ship could navigate the open sea efficiently and safely. Officers reviewed maps, weather patterns, and intelligence about enemy movements, integrating this information into the ship's operational plan. The success of future missions depended heavily on the meticulous attention to detail applied during these port periods. Interactions between crew and townspeople could be complex. Sailors brought stories, news, and exotic items from distant lands, drawing curiosity and fascination. Markets were vibrant with commerce, offering both necessities and curiosities. Yet, sailors also faced cultural differences, unfamiliar customs, and sometimes hostility. Officers often mediated these interactions, ensuring that the crew maintained good relations and avoided unnecessary conflicts. Victory's presence in a port was both a logistical operation and a social event, blending military precision with public diplomacy. Shipboard discipline continued even in port. Watches were maintained, drills practiced, and duties assigned to ensure readiness for departure. Even as sailors relaxed, the ship remained a structured environment, and every crew member understood that the respite was temporary. Orders could come at any moment, requiring men to drop whatever they were doing and return to their stations. This blend of freedom and structure reinforced the dual nature of life aboard a warship, both an extension of human skill and a machine of national power. Recreational activities and rituals helped sustain morale. Music, storytelling, and games continued both onshore and aboard Victory. Celebrations might mark successful resupply, repairs completed, or simply the relief of safe harbor after a stormy voyage. These activities, though informal, strengthened bonds among sailors, creating a sense of community essential for cohesion during subsequent challenges. Every shared song or story reinforced loyalty, trust, and mutual reliance. Victory's officers also used port time to train and instruct. Midshipmen received lessons in navigation, sail handling, and gunnery. Crew members drilled in boarding, cannon operation, and damage control. Even in a relaxed environment, the emphasis on preparation never faded. These sessions were both practical and symbolic, reinforcing the ship's culture of excellence, readiness, and adaptability. Knowledge and skill were continuously passed down, ensuring the next generation of sailors could maintain the ship's legendary reputation. Weather and tides were carefully observed in port as well. Officers monitored conditions to determine the best time to depart, optimize sail handling, and avoid hazards. Understanding local conditions, from river currents to coastal winds, was as vital as any tactical or operational decision. Victory's successful navigation depended on this combination of observation, experience, and preparation, blending scientific understanding with intuition gained from months or years at sea. Even the mundane tasks, such as cleaning decks, repairing sails, or inspecting rigging, were approached with diligence. Sailors understood that neglect could compromise readiness at sea. Every rope checked, every plank inspected, every barrel secured, contributed to the ship's overall effectiveness. This mindset, developed over long voyages and reinforced in port, was critical for maintaining Victory's legendary status as a warship capable of enduring storms, battles, and the vast challenges of oceanic navigation. In port, Victory also served as a training ground for future officers. Young midshipmen observed every aspect of ship operation, from navigation to gunnery, from discipline to diplomacy. They learned not only technical skills but also leadership, decision-making, and human management. These lessons ensured that the traditions, expertise, and culture of the Royal Navy were preserved and passed down, reinforcing the continuity of excellence that defined ships like Victory. Thus, life at port was a vital component of HMS Victory's operations. It provided resupply, maintenance, training, and a brief respite, while reinforcing discipline, cohesion, and operational readiness. The blend of work, preparation, and recreation ensured that when Victory returned to the open sea, she was as formidable and well prepared as ever. Understanding port life completes the picture of the ship, not just as a weapon, but as a self-contained society, a microcosm of human skill, endurance, and adaptability. Life aboard HMS Victory was not only about sails, cannons, and navigation. It was also a deeply human experience shaped by superstition, camaraderie, and the mental challenges of living in a confined, often dangerous environment. Sailors faced monotony, fear, and uncertainty daily, and their lives were full of rituals, beliefs, and coping mechanisms that helped them endure. Understanding these aspects provides a fuller picture of what it truly meant to live aboard one of the most famous warships of the 18th century. Superstition was woven into every aspect of life at sea. Sailors relied on omens, rituals, and beliefs to protect themselves from the capricious dangers of wind and wave. Some carried charms or tokens believed to ward off storms. Others avoided whistling on deck, fearing it might summon strong winds. Cats were common aboard ships, valued not only for controlling vermin but also for bringing good luck. Sailors might perform small, seemingly irrational acts before entering a storm, believing that these rituals could influence fate. While modern eyes may dismiss these practices, they were psychologically significant, giving crew members a sense of control over forces beyond their command. Storytelling was another cornerstone of life aboard Victory. In the evenings, after meals, or during quieter watches, sailors gathered to share tales of past voyages, legendary battles, or fantastical sea creatures. These stories served multiple purposes. They entertained, educated, and reinforced shared cultural identity among the crew. Legends of mermaids, ghost ships, or monstrous storms blurred the line between reality and myth, yet they provided moral lessons, cautionary tales, and inspiration. Even officers occasionally participated, sharing experiences from their own careers, emphasizing bravery, ingenuity, and the importance of discipline. Music played a similar role, both practical and recreational. Singing helped coordinate tasks such as hauling lines or rowing small boats, turning labor into rhythmic motion. Instruments like fiddles or simple drums provided entertainment during downtime, lifting morale and reinforcing camaraderie. The combination of music, storytelling, and humor helped sustain mental resilience, essential in a setting where fear and exhaustion were constant companions. Daily routines and the rigid hierarchy aboard Victory also shaped psychological experiences. Discipline, though sometimes harsh, provided structure and predictability in an environment filled with uncertainty. Sailors knew what to expect, when to eat, when to sleep, and when to prepare for duties. This predictability offered a sense of security, reinforcing trust in the ship's leadership and the operational system that kept everyone alive. At the same time, strict rules mitigated conflicts that might arise from boredom, frustration, or fear. Camaraderie was perhaps the most powerful psychological factor aboard. Sailors depended on one another for survival, whether in a storm, battle, or during routine maintenance. Bonds formed quickly, often transcending social class, nationality, or personal differences. Men shared meals, stories, and hardships, building trust and loyalty. This interdependence created a microsociety where cooperation was essential, and mutual support became a defining feature of life aboard. The mental challenges of extended voyages were significant. Weeks without sight of land could test patience, resolve, and sanity. Sailors confronted isolation, the monotony of routine, and the constant threat of danger. Officers had to monitor morale, identifying individuals struggling with anxiety, fear, or depression, and offering guidance or adjustment of duties to prevent serious problems. Maintaining mental resilience was as vital as physical endurance, ensuring that each member could perform their duties under pressure. Sleep, while necessary, was often fragmented and disrupted by shipboard routines. Watches required sailors to be awake at all hours, climbing, rigging, tending sails, or keeping lookout. Hammocks offered only limited comfort, swinging with the ship's motion and often crowded with fellow sailors. Rest was therefore a precious commodity, and sailors learned to adapt, resting in short periods while remaining alert to the demands of life at sea. This constant tension between work and rest shaped both physical stamina and mental alertness. Food, though monotonous and often unpalatable, also had a psychological dimension. Sharing meals reinforced social bonds, while the limited diet required adaptation and ingenuity. Sailors learned to make the most of what was available, sometimes combining ingredients creatively or trading portions to satisfy preferences. Food scarcity could generate tension, so fair distribution and adherence to rationing rules were essential to maintain morale. Even small comforts, a warm broth, a piece of fresh fruit when available, could lift spirits significantly. Superstitions and rituals extended into interactions with the natural world. Sailors interpreted weather patterns, the behavior of birds, the color of the sea, or the appearance of clouds as omens or warnings. These practices combined practical observation with cultural belief, helping men anticipate storms or navigate treacherous waters. While modern science explains these phenomena, for the crew of Victory, they provided guidance, reassurance, and a sense of participation in the vast, unpredictable forces of the ocean. Humor, often dark or irreverent, was another coping mechanism. Sailors joked about dangers, mocked themselves or each other, and created playful competitions to pass time. This humor, shared and understood within the community, alleviated stress and reinforced social cohesion. Even amid fear or injury, the ability to laugh became a survival skill, reminding men of their humanity in a harsh, unforgiving environment. The relationship between officers and crew also had psychological implications. Respect, authority, and trust were intertwined. Competent, fair leadership fostered loyalty, confidence, and discipline. Abusive or negligent command could erode morale, increase errors, and even incite unrest. The captain and lieutenants had to balance firmness with understanding, ensuring that the crew remained functional, motivated, and cohesive under every circumstance. Rituals extended to the ship's sacred or ceremonial events as well. Sundays or special occasions might involve formal prayers, ceremonies, or celebrations of naval victories. These events provided moments of reflection, reaffirming the shared values and mission of the crew. They reminded sailors that their work was part of a larger purpose, linking individual effort to national pride and historical legacy. Training and skill reinforcement were also psychological tools. Drills, gunnery practice, and sail handling exercises provided a sense of control and mastery. Even when facing unpredictable storms or enemies, practice ensured that the crew's confidence and competence remained high. This preparation was crucial not only for survival, but also for morale, giving sailors faith in their abilities and the ship's capacity to protect them. Through all of these factors, superstition, camaraderie, humor, ritual, and training, the human experience aboard HMS Victory was rich, complex, and deeply interwoven with the technical operation of the ship. The vessel was more than a collection of planks, sails, and cannons. It was a living environment, a society, and a crucible in which human skill, resilience, and adaptability were continuously tested and honed. By understanding the psychological and cultural dimensions of life at sea, we gain insight into why Victory's crew functioned so effectively. Fear and monotony were counterbalanced by camaraderie and ritual. Stress and danger were mitigated by training, discipline, and humor. Isolation was softened by storytelling and shared experience. Every element of human life aboard the ship contributed to her operational success, ensuring that when Victory faced storms or enemies, her crew was ready, resilient, and united. The ship itself became a psychological anchor. Its structure, routines, and clear hierarchy provided stability in a world of uncertainty. Sailors knew that each plank, rope, and sail had a purpose, and that their own efforts contributed to a larger system. This understanding instilled confidence, fostering the trust and cohesion essential for survival and success. HMS Victory was, in essence, both a home and a machine, requiring the full engagement of body, mind, and spirit from all who served aboard her. While the day-to-day life aboard HMS Victory shaped the men who sailed her, the ship's true legacy was forged in the crucible of battle. Victory was not just a floating home or a marvel of naval engineering, it was a key instrument of British naval power, a symbol of strategy, discipline, and dominance on the high seas. Her role in major engagements demonstrates the combination of design, crew skill, and tactical genius that made her legendary. Victory's design reflected a careful balance of firepower, maneuverability, and durability. Her hull, reinforced to withstand enemy cannon fire, allowed her to approach opponents confidently, delivering devastating broadsides while minimizing damage to herself. Multiple gun decks ensured that she could engage foes at various angles, with lower deck cannons targeting holes and upper decks aiming at rigging to cripple enemy mobility. This layered firepower allowed her to dominate engagements, particularly when combined with disciplined, well-trained crews who executed orders with precision. Fleet tactics were central to Victory's effectiveness. Naval warfare in the 18th century relied on formations such as the line of battle, where ships sailed in a single line, maximizing the firepower of their broadsides while presenting a narrow target to the enemy. Commanders had to consider wind, currents, and the positioning of both allies and foes. Victory's captain coordinated closely with other ships, using signals to communicate maneuvers, adjust positioning, and maintain formation. These tactics transformed individual ships into a cohesive, devastating force, where coordination and timing often determined the outcome of an engagement more than sheer firepower. Communication during battle was both sophisticated and limited. Officers relied on flag signals, lanterns, and pre-arranged codes to convey orders. Each sailor had to understand these signals instantly, responding without hesitation. The chain of command had to operate flawlessly, as delays or misunderstandings could expose the ship to concentrated enemy fire or disrupt the formation of the fleet. In this sense, Victory was not only a weapon but also a platform for demonstrating human coordination under extreme pressure. Historical battles illustrate these principles in action. At Trafalgar, for example, Victory's role as flagship under Admiral Nelson showcased the integration of ship design, crew proficiency, and tactical innovation. Nelson's strategies emphasized decisive engagement, bold maneuvering, and close coordination among ships. Victory's cannons roared in synchronized volleys, while sailors executed boarding preparations and damage control with practiced skill. The combination of strategic brilliance and disciplined execution resulted in a stunning victory that cemented Victory's place in history. Victory's crew played a critical role in these successes. Every man, from gun crews to officers, was trained to operate with precision and efficiency. Cannons were loaded and fired in a seamless rhythm, sails adjusted to optimize maneuverability, and lookouts maintained constant vigilance for changes in wind, enemy position, or unexpected hazards. Even minor errors could have catastrophic consequences, so constant training, drills, and attention to detail were essential. The psychological resilience of the crew, honed through months of monotonous labor and exposure to danger, allowed them to perform under the most extreme conditions. Boarding actions and hand-to-hand combat were sometimes decisive in fleet engagements. When ships closed within grappling range, sailors engaged the enemy with cutlasses, pistols, and boarding axes. Officers led these dangerous operations, ensuring coordination and minimizing unnecessary loss of life. Boarding required courage, strength, and mutual trust, with every man depending on his comrades to succeed. In such chaos, the discipline and cohesion of Victory's crew transformed what could have been pandemonium into a coordinated, effective assault. Damage control remained critical during battles. Victory's hull could absorb punishment, but sustained enemy fire required constant vigilance. Crews patched holes, baled water, and reinforced bulkheads while continuing to operate guns and maneuver the ship. Fires, splintered timbers, and disabled rigging threatened both survival and combat effectiveness. Teams moved swiftly, responding to emergencies with rehearsed efficiency. The ability to maintain operational capacity under fire distinguished Victory from lesser vessels and allowed her to endure engagements that might have overwhelmed other ships. Victory's tactical significance extended beyond individual battles. As a flagship, she coordinated fleet movements, conveyed strategic orders, and symbolized British naval authority. Enemy forces recognized her presence as both a practical threat and a psychological one. The ship's reputation enhanced morale among allies and intimidated foes, demonstrating that naval dominance relied not only on cannons and sails, but also on leadership, coordination, and reputation. Wind and weather were always central to strategy. Commanders exploited windward positions to gain tactical advantage, controlling engagement, distance, and maneuvering potential. Sail adjustments, coordinated with cannon fire, allowed Victory to maintain optimal positioning in relation to both allies and enemies. Knowledge of local currents, tides, and prevailing winds informed planning before and during battle. The interplay between natural forces and human decision-making created a complex tactical environment in which Victory excelled. Victory's endurance and adaptability were evident during prolonged campaigns. Long engagements, multiple skirmishes, and extended voyages tested the limits of both ship and crew. Maintaining supplies, morale, and readiness under these conditions required exceptional leadership. Officers managed rations, rotated duties, and monitored fatigue, ensuring that the crew remained functional. Every repair, every resupply, and every rehearsal contributed to sustained combat effectiveness. Victory's ability to maintain operational readiness over extended periods reinforced her strategic value. The ship's historical significance cannot be overstated. Victory embodied the pinnacle of 18th-century naval engineering, integrating firepower, maneuverability, and durability in a way that few contemporaries could match. Beyond technology, she represented the professionalism, discipline, and resilience of the Royal Navy. Victories at sea were not accidental, they were the result of careful design, rigorous training, and meticulous coordination among officers and crew. The lessons learned aboard Victory influenced naval strategy for generations, shaping how ships were built, crews trained, and battles fought. Recognition of Victory's symbolic importance reinforced the ship's legacy. Admirals and sailors alike understood that she was more than a vessel. She was a representation of British naval power and national pride. Preserving her operational readiness, enforcing discipline, and maintaining morale were all acts in service not only to immediate tactical objectives but also to a broader historical mission. Every action aboard Victory carried weight, contributing to the enduring reputation that still captures the imagination today. In sum, Victory's strategic role was a synthesis of design, human skill, and tactical innovation. Her success in major battles like Trafalgar demonstrated the power of coordinated action, precise training, and careful planning. Crew proficiency, from gun crews to officers, ensured that her formidable weaponry could be deployed effectively. Her ability to withstand damage, maneuver in complex tactical situations, and inspire both allies and adversaries made her an indispensable asset to the Royal Navy. Through these engagements, we see how Victory transformed from a floating marvel of engineering into a historical icon. Every plank, rope, and sail, every sailor's action, contributed to her effectiveness. Her legacy endures, not only in the annals of naval history, but in the lessons she offers about leadership, teamwork, discipline, and human ingenuity. Understanding her strategic role allows us to appreciate the full depth of her significance. Blending technology, human skill, and the unpredictable power of the sea into a singularly legendary vessel. After the thunder and chaos of battle subsided, life aboard HMS Victory shifted from combat readiness to recovery and reflection. The transition from action to aftermath was a critical period, demanding both practical efficiency and emotional resilience. Sailors moved from their stations, tending to the wounded, repairing damage, and restoring order, while officers conducted debriefings, assessed strategic outcomes, and prepared the ship for the next operation. These post-battle routines were as vital as the engagement itself, ensuring that Victory remained operational and her crew capable of meeting future challenges. Casualties were the immediate priority. Medical attention aboard Victory was rudimentary by modern standards but often effective given the circumstances. The ship's surgeon and assistants worked tirelessly, moving from deck to deck, treating injuries sustained from cannon fire, splintered wood, musket shots, or boarding encounters. Amputations were common in severe cases, as infection control was limited. The wounded were secured in hammocks or on makeshift beds, receiving care that balanced speed, necessity, and compassion. Sailors assisted wherever they could, passing bandages, carrying the injured, or providing water and support. The shared effort reinforced camaraderie while ensuring the highest chance of survival for those who had been injured. Damage to the ship was addressed immediately. Sailors inspected the hull for breaches, rigging for tears, and sails for holes. Gun decks were cleared of debris, cannons inspected, and any compromised equipment repaired or temporarily secured. Carpenters and riggers worked around the clock to restore structural integrity. Every plank, rope, and spar was examined with meticulous care. Even minor oversights could jeopardize the ship's seaworthiness or compromise its readiness for future engagements. This period tested the crew's endurance, requiring both physical strength and careful coordination under fatigue and stress. Post-battle routines also involved inventorying supplies. Ammunition, gunpowder, and rations were counted and replenished if necessary. Officers assessed losses and made requests for resupply at the next port. Every barrel, cannonball, and rope had to be accounted for. Efficiency in these tasks ensured that Victory could resume operations quickly, maintaining strategic readiness and minimizing vulnerability. The crew's discipline and training, evident in the chaos of battle, now applied to careful methodical recovery. Debriefings and reflections were conducted by officers. Captains, lieutenants, and key personnel analyzed the engagement, identifying successes, mistakes, and lessons for the future. Tactical decisions, positioning, timing of broadsides, and coordination with other ships were all scrutinized. Observations were recorded, shared with future commanders, and used to refine strategy and training. This culture of analysis and learning reinforced the continuous improvement that underpinned Victory's legendary effectiveness. Morale management was equally important. Victories were celebrated, fostering pride and reinforcing commitment to the ship and mission. Sailors were recognized for bravery, skill, or exceptional performance, either through formal commendations or informal acknowledgement by peers. These moments strengthened bonds among the crew, reaffirming loyalty and dedication. Conversely, losses or failures were addressed with care, balancing accountability with support to maintain cohesion and readiness for future challenges. Cleanup and organization extended beyond immediate repairs. Decks were scrubbed, living areas restored, and storage spaces organized. The ship had to be returned to a state of operational readiness quickly. Personal spaces, hammocks, and officers' cabins were inspected, and minor repairs completed. Even small tasks contributed to the overall functioning and discipline of the vessel. This attention to detail reflected the Royal Navy's philosophy that a well-maintained ship was not only safer but also a symbol of professional pride. Victory's crew also engaged in reflection and storytelling after battle. Sailors shared experiences, recounted moments of courage, and sometimes created songs commemorating the engagement. These narratives preserved memory, reinforced group identity, and provided emotional catharsis. Humor, often dark or ironic, was common, helping the crew process trauma while maintaining morale. Storytelling and ritualized reflection were integral to the human experience aboard Victory, linking individual actions to collective history. Training and readiness exercises continued even after combat. Damage control drills, gunnery practice, and navigation exercises ensured that skills remained sharp. New recruits or less experienced sailors were integrated into these routines, observing and learning from veterans. This continuous training reinforced the culture of competence that allowed Victory to operate at peak efficiency, regardless of previous losses or fatigue. Supplies and provisions were re-evaluated post-battle. Rations were adjusted to account for casualties, extra exertion, or upcoming voyages. Freshwater stores were checked, and damaged or contaminated supplies discarded or replaced. Officers ensured that logistics supported both immediate recovery and strategic planning for the next mission. Victory's effectiveness depended not only on her guns and sails, but also on careful management of human and material resources. Communication and reports were prepared for higher command. Captains documented the engagement, detailing ship performance, enemy losses, and any strategic insights. These records contributed to broader operational planning within the fleet, influencing subsequent deployments, tactics, and ship assignments. Victory's experiences became part of a living archive, informing future generations of naval strategy and practice. Psychologically, post-battle periods offered both relief and reflection. Sailors experienced exhaustion, stress, and sometimes grief, tempered by shared accomplishment and communal support. Officers monitored crew morale, offering guidance, assigning rest periods, and facilitating routines that reinforced structure and stability. These measures were critical for sustaining long-term effectiveness, ensuring that each sailor could continue to perform reliably in future engagements. Victory also used these periods to repair or enhance equipment beyond immediate battle damage. Cannons were recalibrated, rigging replaced, and sails mended or reinforced. Storage areas were organized for efficiency, and specialized tools maintained. Continuous attention to these details ensured that the ship's operational readiness remained high, minimizing vulnerabilities and enhancing her legendary resilience. Finally, the post-battle period reinforced the sense of shared purpose. Sailors understood that every action, from firing a cannon to repairing a sail, from caring for the wounded to maintaining discipline, contributed to a collective mission. This understanding reinforced cohesion, loyalty, and pride, strengthening both individual performance and the overall effectiveness of the ship. HMS Victory was not merely a vessel. She was a community, a system, and a symbol of enduring skill, courage, and human coordination. Beyond the excitement and chaos of battle, HMS Victory spent much of her life on long voyages, navigating vast stretches of ocean where monotony, weather, and isolation tested both ship and crew. These extended deployments required adjustments to daily life, careful resource management, and ingenuity to maintain morale, discipline, and operational readiness. Life at sea for weeks or months at a time was as much about endurance and adaptability as it was about strategy or combat. The rhythm of daily life during long voyages was structured but monotonous. Watches rotated every few hours, with sailors assigned to tasks such as steering, lookout, sail adjustment, or maintenance. Even on calm days, the ship required constant attention. Sails had to be trimmed, ropes coiled, decks swabbed, and equipment inspected. Officers oversaw all operations, ensuring that efficiency and discipline were maintained despite the slow passage of time. The monotony could be mentally taxing, and sailors developed routines and rituals to structure their days, such as personal chores, exercises, or informal gatherings for conversation and storytelling. Weather was a constant variable, shaping daily life and determining the ship's speed, safety, and workload. Calm seas allowed for leisurely maintenance and rest, but risked delays in reaching strategic positions. Storms and rough weather demanded heightened vigilance, with crews working tirelessly to adjust sails, secure cargo, and prevent damage. Heavy winds tested rigging and sails, while high seas threatened the deck and hull. Sailors learned to read clouds, wind patterns, and ocean currents, developing an intuitive sense of the sea's moods and timing their actions accordingly. Victory's design allowed her to withstand many conditions, but her crew's skill and coordination were equally critical in keeping the ship safe and effective. Food and water management became especially important on long voyages. Freshwater supplies had to be carefully rationed, stored in barrels, and rotated to prevent contamination. Provisions, often consisting of salted meat, hardtack, and dried vegetables, were supplemented with any opportunities to catch fish or collect rainwater. Sailors learned to adapt recipes, conserve supplies, and share rations equitably to prevent disputes or shortages. Officers monitored consumption closely, balancing nutrition with the limitations of storage and spoilage. The monotony of the diet was offset by creativity and camaraderie, as sailors devised small innovations to improve taste or variety. Hygiene was another constant concern. Limited fresh water, crowded living quarters, and long durations at sea created conditions for disease and discomfort. Sailors maintained cleanliness through routine washing, scrubbing decks, airing hammocks, and rotating clothing. Officers enforced hygiene rules to prevent outbreaks, understanding that even minor lapses could compromise the health of the crew. The close quarters required vigilance, cooperation, and a culture of shared responsibility to keep the ship habitable and operational. Mental resilience was critical during extended deployments. Sailors dealt with isolation, uncertainty, and the monotony of endless horizon. Stories, songs, and humor became essential coping mechanisms. Group activities, like games or drills, provided stimulation and reinforced social bonds. Letters from home, when available, offered emotional sustenance. Officers encouraged morale through structured routines, small recognitions, and maintaining order, knowing that the psychological state of the crew directly impacted their efficiency and safety. Sailors' ingenuity was evident in problem-solving during these long voyages. When equipment failed, materials were scarce, or unexpected challenges arose, crews improvised repairs using available resources. Broken spars might be replaced with spare timber, torn sails patched with spare canvas, and rigging repaired with rope scavenged from other areas. Creativity and resourcefulness were necessary for survival, reinforcing the adaptability and cohesion of the crew. Every successful improvisation boosted confidence and contributed to a sense of self-reliance and mastery over the ship. Navigation was both a technical and psychological challenge. Officers used charts, compasses, sextants, and their understanding of celestial movements to plot courses across vast featureless oceans. Miscalculations could result in delays, encounters with storms, or straying into enemy territory. Sailors relied on the experience and intuition of navigators, learning to interpret wind, current, and the stars. Navigation was a constant intellectual exercise, demanding focus, precision, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. The combination of skill, knowledge, and human judgment ensured that Victory remained on course even during the longest voyages. Storms were among the most dangerous experiences during extended deployments. Heavy rains, high winds, and towering waves tested both the ship's structure and the crew's endurance. Sailors worked relentlessly, reefing sails, securing cargo, and maintaining balance on a rolling deck. Officers coordinated maneuvers to minimize risk and preserve control, often making split-second decisions to adjust course or reduce sail. These events demanded coordination, courage, and technical skill, reminding all aboard of the precarious balance between human effort and nature's power. Survival required both adherence to procedure and adaptability under pressure. Extended voyages also provided opportunities for exploration and observation. Sailors recorded weather patterns, ocean currents, wildlife, and foreign ports. These observations contributed to broader knowledge of maritime navigation and geography, informing future expeditions. Victory was not merely a warship. She was a platform for learning, observation, and the accumulation of knowledge that extended beyond military purposes. The experiences and records of her crew enriched understanding of the world's oceans and coastal regions. The social hierarchy aboard Victory influenced every aspect of long-term life at sea. Officers maintained authority while fostering cooperation, balancing discipline with support. Midshipmen observed and learned from their superiors, developing leadership skills through practical experience. Ordinary sailors understood their roles and responsibilities, and mutual respect was reinforced through shared labor, challenges, and successes. The hierarchical structure provided stability, ensured operational efficiency, and facilitated training and mentorship even in the absence of immediate threats. Recreation and leisure became essential for sustaining morale. Sailors engaged in card games, storytelling, music, or small competitions. Humor, jokes, and playful interactions offered relief from monotony and stress. Social bonds strengthened through shared experience, creating a resilient community capable of enduring long months at sea. Even small pleasures, like a successful fishing effort or an unexpected sighting of land, were celebrated, reinforcing optimism and the mental endurance needed for extended voyages. Health management extended beyond hygiene. Officers monitored crew for signs of scurvy, malnutrition, or fatigue. When possible, the diet was supplemented with citrus or fresh produce to prevent deficiencies. Sailors were encouraged to rest, adjust their workload, and maintain personal routines that supported physical well-being. These measures, while modest, played a crucial role in maintaining the crew's capacity to function during lengthy periods at sea, when illness or exhaustion could compromise both individual and collective survival. Extended deployments demanded that every sailor, officer, and midshipman adapt continuously. The combination of structured routines, skill reinforcement, mental resilience, and social cohesion ensured that Victory could maintain operational readiness despite the inherent challenges of long-term maritime life. Every action, from rope maintenance to navigation calculations, contributed to the survival, efficiency, and eventual success of the ship and her crew. In this way, the ship became more than a vessel. She was a microcosm of human endurance, creativity, and collaboration. Life aboard Victory during long voyages showcased the interplay between discipline, adaptability, and ingenuity. Sailors were not passive passengers. They were active participants in the ongoing management of a complex, demanding system that required constant attention, cooperation, and resilience. These experiences prepared the crew for any challenge, whether navigating treacherous waters, engaging the enemy, or surviving the hardships of extended time at sea. Beyond the immediate challenges of life, aboard an extended voyages, HMS Victory functioned as part of a global naval system, connecting distant ports, supply chains, and strategic theaters of operation. Her effectiveness depended not only on her design and crew, but also on careful planning, logistics, and coordination across the Royal Nation. Understanding these operational nation in understanding with, understanding in tating, understanding, and instank. And in Q to sangs to kin its clag, kin croik in it, with kin rip with big guy, with to gaff for to been good, but with peg with that, with hap, mac, about wick up, hack at tap, hood up a bap, at opposite sack with papa, with gap our papas, at attack, tap, with back, half got to best, but ask a gas, would be good, east, but got odds. Instead of fixed that it was stuck the gaffs to the so it's stuck the first to get it just supply chains were the backbone of naval operations. Victory's long deployments required consistent access to food, water, gunpowder, and spare equipment. Ports served as nodes in a complex logistical web, where officers coordinated the loading of provisions, repairs, and resupply before resuming missions. Information about available resources, local conditions, and Allied support informed planning, ensuring that ships could remain at sea for weeks or months without succumbing to shortages. Efficient logistics allowed Victory to project power across oceans, demonstrating that naval supremacy was as much a matter of preparation as of combat. Interactions with Allied and neutral ports were critical to sustaining operations. Victory's officers negotiated access to harbors, secured provisions, and obtained intelligence about enemy movements. Diplomacy complemented military readiness, as local cooperation could enhance efficiency and safety, while misunderstandings or hostilities could jeopardize missions. Navigating these interactions required tact, cultural awareness, and strategic insight. The ship became both a military instrument and a diplomatic envoy, projecting influence even when not engaged in battle. Maintenance and repair networks were equally vital. Specialized dockyards were established at key locations, capable of repairing hull damage, replacing masts, and restoring rigging after long voyages or combat. Carpenters, shipwrights, sailmakers, and artisans collaborated to ensure that Victory remained operational. The availability of skilled labor and materials dictated where she could safely dock and resume missions. Officers had to anticipate the timing and location of repairs, integrating this information into broader strategic planning. A ship's durability depended not only on design, but also on access to infrastructure that supported sustained operations. Strategic planning extended across theaters of operation. Admirals and captains evaluated political, military, and environmental factors to determine Victory's deployment. Intelligence reports, weather patterns, and knowledge of enemy positions informed these decisions. Victories at sea were rarely isolated. They were the product of coordinated campaigns, synchronized with other ships, fleets, and theaters of operation. Victory's role was both tactical and symbolic, reinforcing British naval presence and shaping outcomes across vast distances. Communication across the fleet was a constant challenge. Signal flags, lanterns, and pre-arranged codes allowed coordination during battles, but transmitting information over long distances required careful planning. Couriers, fast ships, and port-based intelligence networks ensured that strategic decisions were informed by up-to-date knowledge. Officers aboard Victory were adept at interpreting incomplete information and adapting plans accordingly. Flexibility and judgment were essential. Rigid adherence to a flawed plan could result in disaster. Long-distance operations demanded foresight in provisioning. Officers calculated consumption rates, potential spoilage, and contingencies for delays or combat. Rations were carefully distributed and monitored to prevent shortages. Water storage and purification were critical, as dehydration could cripple a crew faster than enemy fire. Equipment and spare parts were inventoried and stowed for accessibility during emergencies. Every detail was scrutinized to ensure that the ship could operate independently for extended periods, maintaining readiness and effectiveness across the globe. Interactions with foreign ports also introduced cultural and environmental challenges. Sailors had to navigate unfamiliar laws, customs, and local power structures. Trade regulations, health requirements, and local hazards required constant awareness. Victory's officers balanced operational goals with diplomacy, ensuring that the ship could operate safely and efficiently while fostering relationships that enhanced strategic advantage. These interactions were microcosms of the broader geopolitical landscape in which Victory operated. Shipboard hierarchy played a central role in coordinating these global operations. Officers delegated responsibilities for navigation, supply management, maintenance, and diplomacy. Midshipmen learned to balance initiative with adherence to orders, observing how decisions at every level influenced overall mission success. Ordinary sailors executed daily tasks that collectively sustained the ship's operational capacity. This hierarchical structure ensured that complex, interdependent tasks were carried out efficiently, even during extended deployments across oceans. Victory's crew had to adapt to constantly changing environments. Tropical heat, icy northern waters, and temperate zones each imposed different demands on sails, rigging, and hull integrity. Maintenance routines were adjusted to suit conditions, while sailors modified clothing, diet, and daily schedules for comfort and survival. Environmental awareness was critical for both operational efficiency and human well-being. Officers trained the crew to anticipate challenges and respond proactively, blending technical knowledge with practical experience. Naval intelligence was another essential element of long-distance operations. Victory's officers collected information about enemy positions, shipping routes, and geopolitical developments. This knowledge informed tactical and strategic decisions, allowing the ship to act with foresight rather than reacting blindly. Observation, record-keeping, and analysis were routine, integrated into the daily work of officers and experienced crew. Even seemingly minor observations, such as unusual ship movements or unfamiliar harbor activity, could influence the outcome of future engagements. Extended global operations also tested endurance, discipline, and morale over months or years. Sailors relied on routines, social cohesion, and shared rituals to maintain psychological resilience. Letters from home, storytelling, music, and camaraderie provided emotional support, while structured work ensured focus and purpose. Discipline ensured that fatigue or boredom did not compromise operational readiness. The human element remained as crucial as the ship's physical design, as a disorganized, demoralized crew could render even the most formidable vessel ineffective. Training and knowledge transfer were ongoing throughout these deployments. Midshipmen observed officers' decision-making, learned navigation techniques, and practiced leadership skills. Experienced sailors shared practical knowledge about sail handling, damage control, and daily routines. This culture of continuous learning ensured that the ship remained not only operational, but also a living center of skill development, passing expertise from one generation to the next. Victory's effectiveness in global operations reflected the interplay between preparation, adaptability, and execution. Every port visit, supply decision, and strategic deployment contributed to her operational readiness. Coordination with other ships, understanding of local conditions, and foresight in planning ensured that the ship could project power far from home waters. Victory's success was a combination of human skill, logistical acumen, and engineering excellence, demonstrating the complexity of 18th-century naval warfare on a global scale. Finally, these extended operations reinforced Victory's symbolic significance. Beyond tactical achievements, the ship represented British naval reach, professionalism, and influence. Her presence in distant waters projected authority, reassured allies, and intimidated potential adversaries. Every port, visit, maneuver, and engagement contributed to the broader narrative of British maritime dominance, cementing Victory's legacy as both a practical instrument of war and an enduring emblem of national power. Even when not engaged in battle or long deployments, HMS Victory's life continued with purpose, discipline, and constant preparation. Peacetime operations were far from idle. They involved training, maintenance, ceremonial duties, and careful planning to ensure that the ship remained ready for any eventuality. Understanding these routines provides insight into how Victory maintained her legendary status and why her crew remained efficient, disciplined, and cohesive even outside combat. Training was a continuous priority. Officers oversaw drills in gunnery, sail handling, and damage control, ensuring that every crew member could perform under pressure. Cannons were cleaned, tested, and carefully aligned, while sailors practiced loading and firing sequences with precision. Sails were adjusted, knots rehearsed, and ropework perfected. Even during calm days or periods of relative inactivity, the crew engaged in these exercises to maintain skill levels and prevent complacency. This culture of constant practice reinforced discipline, competence, and readiness. Daily routines in peacetime mirrored those at sea but were less urgent than during battle. Sailors rotated through cleaning decks, inspecting, rigging, maintaining equipment, and assisting officers with navigation exercises. Officers reviewed logs, charts, and plans for future operations. Midshipmen continued their education, learning from experienced crew and officers alike. Every action, though routine, contributed to the overall effectiveness and operational preparedness of the ship. Peacetime allowed for refinement of techniques and consolidation of experience. Maintenance cycles were a major focus during non-combat periods. Sails were repaired, ropes replaced, and the hull inspected for signs of wear or damage. Carpenters and riggers worked alongside sailors to ensure that the ship remained structurally sound. Even minor repairs received attention, as neglect could lead to serious problems during future missions. Peacetime was a chance to address issues that could not be fully resolved during long voyages or after battle. Every nail hammered, rope spliced, or plank replaced was a safeguard for future safety and efficiency. Ceremonial duties played an important role in maintaining morale, discipline, and public image. HMS Victory often hosted visiting officials, conducted salutes, or participated in formal reviews. Sailors practiced precision movements, flag signaling, and coordinated drills to demonstrate professionalism. These ceremonies reinforced hierarchy, instilled pride, and showcased the ship as a symbol of British naval power. For ordinary sailors, participation offered a break from routine tasks while connecting them to a larger purpose and tradition. Education and knowledge transfer were ongoing. Officers trained midshipmen in navigation, leadership, and tactical decision-making. Experienced sailors passed down practical skills such as sail, repair, ropework, and emergency response. This continuous learning ensured that expertise was preserved and enhanced, creating a resilient and skilled crew capable of performing in high-pressure situations. Peacetime allowed for deeper study, reflection, and rehearsal of complex procedures that might be rushed or overlooked during active missions. Logistics planning continued even outside of immediate deployments. Officers evaluated supply levels, monitored equipment condition, and coordinated with dockyards for potential repairs. Charts were updated, records maintained, and contingencies prepared for both local and distant operations. This proactive approach ensured that Victory could respond rapidly to orders, reinforcing her reliability and strategic value. Attention to detail in logistics was as crucial in peacetime as it was in the heat of battle. Morale management remained central. Officers organized recreational activities, music, and storytelling sessions to maintain camaraderie and mental well-being. Sailors were encouraged to socialize, participate in games, and engage in creative activities such as carving, drawing, or crafting small items. Humor and informal competitions helped relieve tension and strengthened social bonds. These activities reinforced a sense of community, ensuring that the crew remained cohesive and motivated even in the absence of immediate danger. Peacetime also allowed for innovation and experimentation. Sailors and officers tested new techniques for sail handling, rigging arrangements, or weapon deployment. Modifications and improvements were trialed in controlled conditions, reducing risk while enhancing performance. Lessons learned during these periods informed future strategies and operational procedures. Victory's ongoing adaptability was a product of this culture of experimentation, combined with disciplined observation and reflection. Medical and health routines were carefully maintained. Regular inspections, cleaning, and monitoring of hygiene reduced the risk of disease and infection. Surgeons and assistants conducted preventative care, treated minor injuries, and provided guidance on diet and exercise. Peacetime offered an opportunity to address health concerns that may have been neglected during extended deployments. Maintaining a healthy crew ensured that the ship remained fully operational and reduced the risk of sudden incapacitation during future missions. Records and documentation were meticulously maintained. Officers logged drills, repairs, supply inventories, and crew performance. Charts and navigation records were updated, observations of currents, tides, and winds noted, and intelligence from recent voyages analyzed. These detailed records ensured continuity, informed strategic decisions, and served as historical documentation of Victory's operations. Meticulous documentation was a hallmark of the Royal Navy, reflecting the integration of discipline, observation, and learning into daily practice. Routine inspections reinforced accountability and attention to detail. Officers conducted checks of every area aboard, from gun decks to living quarters. Sailors were held responsible for maintaining their assigned stations, equipment, and personal spaces. This culture of accountability ensured that minor issues were addressed before they could escalate and reinforced the professionalism that defined Victory's crew. Discipline was not punitive alone. It was a practical mechanism to sustain operational readiness and ensure safety. Weather and environmental adaptation continued to influence daily life. Sailors learned to read skies, tides, and winds to anticipate challenges. Even in calm conditions, attention to environmental cues allowed for preparation and reduced risk. Training exercises often incorporated these lessons, ensuring that the crew remained alert and responsive. Understanding natural forces was as essential during peacetime as during combat, reinforcing the connection between knowledge, skill, and survival. Victory's peacetime routines reinforced her dual identity as both a symbol and a functional warship. The ship was maintained meticulously, her crew trained continuously, and her presence projected authority and professionalism. Every task, from cleaning decks to conducting ceremonies, contributed to operational readiness, skill development, and morale. Peacetime was not idle. It was an essential period of preparation, reflection, and enhancement, ensuring that Victory could fulfill her strategic and symbolic roles whenever called upon. In essence, life aboard HMS Victory during peacetime was a blend of discipline, training, maintenance, ceremonial duties, and social cohesion. The crew's continuous engagement with the ship's systems, routines, and traditions reinforced operational readiness while maintaining morale and skill. Peacetime allowed for reflection, learning, and improvement, ensuring that every sailor, midshipman, and officer contributed to the ongoing legacy of one of history's most remarkable warships. Beyond her operational life, HMS Victory evolved into a symbol, a cultural icon whose significance extended far beyond the men who sailed her and the battles she fought. Her legacy was preserved not only in historical records but in public imagination, art, and ceremonial homage. Understanding Victory's cultural and symbolic importance allows us to see how a single ship could embody national pride, naval heritage, and the ideals of courage, discipline, and resilience. Victory's fame was cemented by her role at Trafalgar. The ship became synonymous with Admiral Nelson, whose leadership and ultimate sacrifice during the battle elevated her from a mere vessel to a symbol of British naval supremacy. The events aboard Victory resonated deeply with the public, and stories of her crew's courage, ingenuity, and endurance were widely circulated. Artists, writers, and historians chronicled her triumphs, ensuring that she occupied a central place in the narrative of British naval history. The ship was no longer just a tool of war. She had become a representation of national identity and pride. Public perception of Victory grew as accounts of her service spread. Visitors to dockyards and ports were captivated by her size, design, and history. Ceremonial appearances, such as salutes to royalty or participation in fleet reviews, reinforced her status as a living emblem of power. Sailors, officers, and civilians alike recognized her not only for military achievements, but for what she represented: order, discipline, technological mastery, and the spirit of the Royal Navy. Victory's presence conveyed authority and inspired confidence both at home and abroad. Art and literature played a vital role in preserving and shaping Victory's legacy. Paintings depicting Trafalgar, prints illustrating her grandeur, and written accounts of her battles and voyages immortalized the ship in vivid detail. These works captured both the drama of combat and the humanity of her crew, providing future generations with insight into naval life and the significance of her achievements. Victory's representation in culture reinforced her symbolic value, ensuring that her influence extended beyond her physical existence. Victory also became a focal point for ceremonies and commemoration. Memorials, anniversaries, and public events celebrated her service and the men who sailed aboard her. These events reinforced a collective memory of courage, sacrifice, and national pride. For sailors and civilians, Victory embodied ideals of professionalism, bravery, and the enduring power of organized maritime forces. She was a tangible connection to history, allowing people to experience the legacy of the Royal Navy through the presence of a single, iconic vessel. Preservation efforts began to recognize the importance of maintaining Victory for future generations. Understanding her historical significance, the Royal Navy and associated institutions undertook careful restoration and conservation. Structural repairs, protection from decay, and historical accuracy in materials and fittings ensured that the ship remained both a functional artifact and an educational tool. These efforts preserved not only the physical vessel, but also the stories, skills, and traditions associated with her operational life. Victory became a living museum, bridging past and present. Educational programs and public tours allowed civilians to engage directly with the ship's history. Visitors could walk her decks, explore her cabins, and observe the spaces where sailors lived, trained, and fought. Interpretive exhibits explained ship design, daily life, tactics, and historical context, making the ship accessible and comprehensible. Through this direct engagement, Victory became more than an object of admiration. She became a tool for learning, reflection, and cultural enrichment. The experience of exploring her decks offered insight into the human endeavor, ingenuity, and resilience that had characterized her operational life. Victory's symbolism extended into national memory. She represented continuity between generations of sailors, connecting the achievements of the 18th century to the ongoing traditions of the Royal Navy. Ceremonies, commemorations, and historical accounts reinforced her role as a moral and cultural exemplar, reminding both military personnel and the public of the values embodied by discipline, courage, and coordinated effort. Victory's legacy became inseparable from the identity of the Royal Navy itself. The ship also inspired research and scholarship. Historians, engineers, and naval enthusiasts studied her construction, design, and operational history to understand 18th century naval technology and strategy. Archival documents, logs, and personal accounts from her crew provided detailed insights into daily life, tactics, and the challenges of long voyages. This scholarship contributed to broader understanding of maritime history and preserved knowledge that would otherwise have been lost. Victory thus functioned as both a historical artifact and a source of ongoing intellectual exploration. Victory's cultural impact was reinforced by her ability to evoke imagination and storytelling. Novels, films, and dramatizations drew on her history to explore themes of bravery, leadership, and adventure. The ship became a character in her own right, with the physical structure, crew experiences, and historical events forming a narrative that captivated audiences. Through storytelling, Victory's significance transcended her era, influencing how successive generations understood the age of sail, naval warfare, and human endeavor at sea. Commemorative initiatives ensured that Victory's contributions were remembered. Monuments, plaques, and museum exhibits highlighted key battles, notable officers, and moments of heroic action. Annual ceremonies, particularly on significant anniversaries, such as Trafalgar Day, reinforced her place in public consciousness. These acts of remembrance linked history to contemporary society, allowing both citizens and service members to connect with the values and achievements represented by the ship. Victory's preservation was not only about maintaining her structure, but about sustaining her authenticity. Restoration efforts aimed to retain as much original material as possible, ensuring that visitors experienced the ship as closely as possible to how she had appeared during her operational life. This attention to detail enhanced the educational and cultural value of Victory, allowing her to serve as a tangible connection to the past while remaining accessible to modern audiences. In contemporary times, Victory continues to serve as an emblem of historical memory. She represents technological innovation, human resilience, and the enduring importance of naval power. Visitors experience more than a ship. They engage with the cumulative history of her battles, voyages, and crew life. Through this, Victory maintains relevance, offering lessons in discipline, strategy, collaboration, and perseverance that transcend centuries. Ultimately, HMS Victory's cultural legacy illustrates the power of symbols in shaping collective memory. She embodies the intersection of technology, human skill, and historical narrative, serving as a bridge between operational history and enduring cultural significance. Victory demonstrates how a single vessel can encapsulate national identity, technological achievement, and human resilience, preserving the stories of sailors, officers, and battles for generations to come. HMS Victory's story does not end with her preservation in dockyards or her fame as a museum ship. Her influence continues to resonate in naval tradition, maritime engineering, and public imagination. She serves as a reminder of the ingenuity, discipline, and human endurance required to master the sea, and her story continues to teach, inspire, and captivate. Understanding Victory's enduring relevance allows us to appreciate not only the achievements of her era, but also the broader lessons that her life and legacy offer to future generations. One of Victory's most enduring lessons is the importance of design and engineering in achieving operational success. Every plank, beam, and sail was carefully planned to balance speed, firepower, and resilience. Her hull was shaped to withstand cannon fire while maximizing maneuverability. Her gun decks were arranged to deliver maximum firepower, and her rigging allowed precise control, even under challenging conditions. Modern naval architects study her structure not merely as history but as a testament to the thoughtful integration of form and function. The principles of balance, adaptability, and efficiency that guided her construction remain relevant to shipbuilding, engineering, and design disciplines today. Victory also teaches the value of human skill and teamwork. Her crew's performance under extreme conditions, whether during battle, storm, or extended voyage, was as crucial as the ship's physical design. Coordination, discipline, and specialized knowledge allowed sailors to operate complex systems under stress, demonstrating the power of collective effort. Lessons from Victory's operational life extend beyond naval applications. They illuminate the ways in which human cooperation, training, and leadership can achieve remarkable outcomes in any high-stakes environment. Leadership is another key takeaway from Victory's story. Admiral Nelson's command highlighted how vision, decisiveness, and personal example can shape outcomes even in unpredictable conditions. Victory's officers demonstrated the importance of foresight, preparation, and adaptability, blending strategic planning with the practical realities of life at sea. Their decisions, informed by experience and observation, reinforce the value of leadership that is both disciplined and responsive, capable of guiding complex systems through uncertainty. These principles continue to resonate in modern management, military strategy, and organizational practice. The ship's operational history emphasizes the integration of technology, strategy, and human performance. Every successful maneuver, coordinated broadside, and damage control response was the result of this integration. Victory illustrates how systems function best when components, whether human, mechanical, or organizational, are aligned toward a shared goal. Observing her operations provides insight into the interplay between planning and improvisation, structure and flexibility, precision and creativity, highlighting timeless lessons in efficiency and resilience. Victory's educational value is equally significant. As a museum ship, she allows visitors to step directly into history, experiencing the environment in which sailors lived, trained, and fought. Decks, cabins, and gun positions provide tangible understanding of life aboard an 18th-century warship. Exhibits, guided tours, and interactive displays connect historical events to human experiences, allowing learners of all ages to explore complex concepts such as navigation, naval tactics, and maritime logistics. Victory transforms abstract historical knowledge into a lived, immersive experience, making the past accessible and meaningful. Cultural inspiration flows naturally from Victory's story. Artists, filmmakers, writers, and educators draw upon her legacy to explore themes of bravery, endurance, and ingenuity. Her presence in literature and visual culture emphasizes the human dimension of naval history, highlighting individual courage, collective effort, and the drama of life at sea. Through these representations, Victory's influence transcends time, engaging imagination and fostering appreciation for the extraordinary challenges faced by sailors in an age when the ocean was both a highway and a battlefield. Victory also demonstrates the significance of preservation and historical stewardship, maintaining her physical structure, interpreting her history accurately, and conveying her stories to the public requires meticulous attention, collaboration, and expertise. Preservation is an ongoing process that balances historical authenticity with accessibility, ensuring that her lessons endure for future generations. Victory exemplifies how historical artifacts can function as active, educational, and cultural tools rather than static relics, bridging centuries through engagement and storytelling. The ship's story reinforces broader historical understanding. Victory represents the technological, social, and cultural dimensions of the age of sail, illuminating the complexities of naval warfare, long-distance navigation, and life at sea. She connects personal narratives of sailors, officers, and craftsmen with global historical developments, demonstrating the interplay between individual experience and larger historical forces. Through Victory, we gain insight into the human, strategic, and technological achievements that shaped maritime history and, by extension, the world. Victory's legacy extends to modern naval training and doctrine. Lessons in discipline, coordination, damage control, and leadership derived from her operations continue to inform military practice. The principles demonstrated aboard her preparation, adaptability, resilience, and effective communication remain relevant to contemporary naval strategy and broader operational planning. Victory serves as both a historical case study and a touchstone for understanding enduring concepts in leadership, organization, and human performance. Finally, Victory's story is one of inspiration. She reminds us of human ingenuity and courage, the capacity to design and execute complex systems under extreme conditions, and the enduring impact of collective effort. Visitors who walk her decks, historians who study her logs, and enthusiasts who explore her legacy all connect with the enduring human themes that she embodies. Victory teaches that skill, preparation, resilience, and shared purpose can overcome even the most daunting challenges, whether on the open sea of the 18th century or in contemporary endeavors. In conclusion, HMS Victory remains a living monument to naval history, human achievement, and cultural memory. Her design, operational history, crew life, and preservation illustrate timeless lessons in engineering, leadership, teamwork, and resilience. Victory continues to educate, inspire, and captivate, bridging centuries and connecting people to the extraordinary challenges and triumphs of life at sea. As both a physical artifact and a symbol of enduring values, she embodies the intersection of technology, human skill, and history, ensuring that her story remains alive in the imagination of generations to come. HMS Victory is more than a ship. She is a testament to human ingenuity, perseverance, and the spirit of exploration and defense. Her decks, sails, and timbers hold the stories of countless men and women whose labor, courage, and expertise allowed her to become a legend. By studying, preserving, and celebrating Victory, we honor not only her technical achievements but also the human experience that gave her life, legacy, and enduring relevance.